It was a dark and stormy night as I found myself driving through the back roads of Mississippi. Rain pounded on the windshield, making it difficult to see the path ahead. As I strained my eyes through the downpour, I noticed a faint glow in the distance. Curiosity getting the better of me, I decided to investigate. To my surprise, an old cemetery stood before me, one I was certain hadn't been there before. The gravestones were weathered and covered in moss, giving off an eerie vibe. Despite the rain and chill in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My car suddenly sputtered and came to a halt, leaving me stranded near the mysterious cemetery. I let out an exasperated sigh and got out to see if I could fix the issue. The rain soaked through my clothes as I popped open the hood, but it didn't seem like anything I could fix on my own. With no choice but to wait for help, I dialed up my service guy and sent him my live location. As I was busy with my phone, I noticed some vague whispers in the air. Low, guttural sounds that seemed to come from all directions. I looked around, but there was no one else in sight. Nervously, I peered back at the gravestones. The rain had subsided slightly, and the dim moonlight revealed strange engravings on the stones. Symbols that were unfamiliar to me, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Despite the strange circumstances, I tried to brush off my unease as my mind played tricks on me. I told myself it was just the wind or the creaking of the trees. But as I focused on the sounds, I realized they were different. The whispers seemed to grow louder, almost as if they were beckoning me. In an attempt to distract myself, I decided to explore the cemetery. My footsteps echoed through the silence as I walked among the graves, each step filling me with a sense of trepidation. The further I wandered, the colder it became, and a chill ran down my spine. Suddenly, I heard a distant howl that made me jump. It sounded like a wolf, but I couldn't see any wildlife around. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I quickened my pace, feeling like I was being followed. As I reached the center of the cemetery, I saw a mausoleum covered in ivy. The doors were slightly ajar, and I hesitated for a moment before pushing them open. The inside was dark and damp, the air heavy with a musty scent. I shined my flashlight around, revealing dusty shelves lined with old books and objects that appeared to be ancient artifacts. The whispers seemed to grow louder in the confined space, and a sense of dread washed over me. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like I had stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to see. With trembling hands, I turned to leave, but the doors slammed shut, trapping me inside. My heart pounded in my chest as panic set in. I frantically tugged at the door handles, but they refused to budge, as if held by an invisible force. My heart pounded in my chest like a relentless drumbeat, and my breaths became shallow and rapid. I was trapped, and the realization sent waves of terror coursing through me. How had the doors closed on their own? Was someone playing a cruel prank on me? Or was there something more sinister at play? With each passing moment, the tension escalated, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. The air grew thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the sound of my frantic breathing. Every creak and groan sounded like a sinister whisper, like the building itself was alive and mocking my desperate attempts to escape. I banged on the doors, desperate to escape, but they wouldn't budge. The whispers now seemed to echo all around me, as if the very walls were speaking. Fear consumed me as I frantically searched for another way out. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. My mind raced with thoughts of the unknown, and the feeling of being watched intensified. I could almost see eyes peering at me from the darkness. Just when I thought all hope was lost, the doors suddenly creaked open, and I stumbled out into the fresh air. The whispers faded, and the eerie atmosphere lifted, leaving me feeling disoriented and frightened. I wasted no time in running back to my car, not looking back at the haunted cemetery. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had witnessed something beyond explanation. The memory of the chilling whispers and mysterious presence would stay with me forever, a haunting reminder of that fateful night in the Mississippi cemetery. To this day, it haunts my dreams, and the fear of the unknown lingers in the darkest corners of my mind. If you enjoy listening to horror stories for hours at a stretch, then you are at a right place. Subscribe to Mr. Scare right away. Navigating through the dense forests of Oregon on a stormy night was no easy task. The rain hammered down relentlessly, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. The wind howled through the trees, creating an eerie symphony that sent shivers down my spine. I clutched the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white as I struggled to keep the car on the narrow, winding road. As I pressed on, hoping to find civilization soon, my headlights caught a glimpse of something up ahead. It was a vehicle, parked in the middle of the road, its hazard lights blinking weakly through the downpour. My heart skipped a beat as I approached, a sinking feeling settling in the pit of my stomach. The car looked abandoned, but something was off about it. The windows were covered in strange patterns of dried blood, like macabre art splattered across the glass. Panic began to rise within me, and I could feel my breath quickening as a chilling sense of dread washed over me. I slowed my car to have a clear look, but I dared not stop or get out. The rain pelted down on my windshield, making the bloodstains appear even more grotesque and sinister. Fear gnawed at me, and my mind raced with disturbing possibilities. What had happened here? Had there been an accident? Or something far more sinister? As I peered through the rain-spattered glass, my eyes caught a flicker of movement inside the vehicle. A shadow, fleeting and indistinct, darted across the back seat. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light or a figment of my imagination, but the feeling of unease lingered. There was something about this scene that didn't add up. The car looked abandoned, but the bloodstains and the shadowy figure inside suggested otherwise. As I weighed my options, a bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in an eerie glow. In that brief flash of light, I caught a glimpse of something else, a figure standing at the edge of the trees, just beyond the reach of my headlights. It was a dark, ominous silhouette, watching me. Fear gripped me like a vice as I floored the gas pedal and sped away from the scene. The rain continued to pour, the wind howled, and the forest seemed to close in around me, as if it wanted to keep me trapped within its sinister embrace. I kept driving, my heart pounding, the image of the blood-stained car and the mysterious figure burned into my mind. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As I navigated through the dark and treacherous forest, I couldn't help but wonder what horrors lay hidden in the shadows. The thought of encountering that mysterious figure again sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't help but glance nervously at my rearview mirror, half expecting to see it lurking behind me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I emerged from the dense forest and found myself back on a well-lit and familiar road. Relief washed over me as I put distance between myself and the blood-stained car, but the memory of that night would haunt me for years to come. To this day, I can't explain what I saw or what happened in that forsaken corner of the Oregon forest. It remains a chilling mystery, a nightmarish encounter with the unknown that will forever be etched into my memory. And as I continue to drive through the dark and stormy nights, I can't help but wonder what other terrors might be lurking in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. Late at night, I found myself driving down a deserted highway in the heart of the Nevada desert. The road stretched out before me, surrounded by vast nothingness on all sides. My heart pounded in my chest as I navigated the lonely stretch, feeling like I was the only soul for miles around. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, a shiver ran down my spine. There, in the distance, were two glowing eyes, like twin orbs of fiery light. They seemed to pierce through the darkness, fixated on me, and sent chills down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was just another vehicle, but something about those eyes felt eerie and unnatural. They followed me relentlessly, no matter how fast or slow I drove. The car seemed to be in no hurry to catch up with me, almost as if it was playing with me. I could barely make out the outline of the vehicle, but its presence was unmistakable. The headlights flashed erratically, almost as if they were trying to communicate some cryptic message. My heart pounded with fear and confusion, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched by something malevolent. In an attempt to put distance between myself and the mysterious car, I pressed my foot down on the gas pedal, causing my car to accelerate. But no matter how fast I went, the glowing eyes remained at the same distance, never drawing nearer or fading away. Fear consumed me as I tried to make sense of the situation. Who could be following me in the middle of nowhere? Was it a prank, or was there something more sinister at play? My mind raced with possibilities, and I considered pulling over to confront the driver. But the thought of facing the unknown terrified me even more. What if this was some sort of trap? What if the car was driven by something otherworldly, something I couldn't comprehend? As the minutes turned into hours, the highway seemed to stretch on forever, with no signs of civilization in sight. The glowing eyes in the rearview mirror remained a constant presence, a haunting reminder of the eerie situation I was in. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, that exhaustion and the desolate surroundings were playing tricks on my mind. But the fear and tension in my chest wouldn't go away, and every time I stole a glance at the mirror, the eyes were still there, unyielding in their pursuit. I contemplated calling the police, but I knew it would be futile. How could I explain that I was being followed by a pair of glowing eyes in the middle of nowhere? They would think I was crazy or trying to play a prank. As I continued to drive, I noticed something peculiar. The glowing eyes seemed to change color, shifting from fiery red to an eerie blue hue. It was as if they were taunting me, mocking my fear, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were somehow connected to a malevolent force. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, and the darkness outside became suffocating. I longed for the first rays of dawn, hoping that the light would drive away the mysterious pursuer. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke through the horizon, the glowing eyes vanished. They simply disappeared, leaving me in a state of shock and relief. As I pulled over to catch my breath, I tried to make sense of the night's events. What had I just experienced? Was it a figment of my imagination or something more tangible? I may never know the truth, but the memory of those haunting eyes will forever linger in my mind, a chilling reminder that the unknown can be far more terrifying than anything we can comprehend. It was a dark and foggy night in the heart of Louisiana. The narrow back roads were enveloped in an eerie mist, and I could barely see beyond a few feet in front of me. As I relied on my GPS to guide me back to civilization, a sense of unease washed over me. The GPS screen flickers erratically, and the voice instructions became distorted, leading me further into the desolate marshlands. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of the situation. I had driven these roads before, and they were never this treacherous. The fog seemed to swallow everything in its path, leaving me disoriented and unsure of my surroundings. As I continued to follow the GPS, strange whispers echoed outside the car. It sounded like faint murmurs carried by the wind, but there was no one in sight. Goosebumps prickled on my skin as I tried to dismiss the sounds as my imagination playing tricks on me. But the whispers persisted, growing louder and more distinct. They seemed to be beckoning me, luring me deeper into the unknown. Fear gnawed at my insides, and I contemplated turning back, but I knew that I couldn't navigate through the dense fog without the GPS. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, and with each passing mile, the whispers became more ominous. My heart raced, and I felt a sense of foreboding, as if I had stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to witness. Suddenly, the GPS screen went completely black, and the voice fell silent. Panic gripped me, and I pulled over to the side of the road. I tried to restart the device, but it remained unresponsive. I was completely cut off from any sense of direction, lost in the heart of the marshlands. The darkness outside seemed to press in on me, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breaths. As I sat in the darkness, the whispers outside the car grew louder, as if they were taunting me for being trapped in this nightmarish situation. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, lurking just beyond the fog. My heart raced, and I could feel the beads of sweat forming on my forehead. Despite the coolness of the night air, I turned on the car's radio, hoping that the sound of music or a familiar voice would drown out the sinister whispers. But as the static-filled channels flickered through, I only caught fragments of eerie and cryptic messages that sent chills down my spine. Each rustling of the trees, each creak of the car, seemed to be amplified, sending shivers down my spine and filling me with a heightened sense of paranoia. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, to abandon my car and run into the unknown, but fear rooted me to my seat. I couldn't bear the thought of stepping out into the darkness, where unseen terrors might lie in wait. The whispers outside grew more menacing, as if mocking my fear and vulnerability. I pressed my palms against my ears, trying to block out the haunting voices, but they continued to echo in my mind, tormenting me with their cryptic messages. The fog seemed to thicken, enveloping my car in an impenetrable shroud, cutting off any chance of escape. I was trapped, a helpless prey caught in the snare of an unseen predator. Desperate to find my way back, I rolled down the window, hoping to hear the sounds of civilization. But all that greeted me was the eerie silence of the marshlands. There were no signs of life, no distant lights, just an overwhelming sense of isolation. With a trembling hand, I reached for my phone to call for help, only to find that there was no signal. Panic surged through me, and I felt a sense of hopelessness wash over me. I was completely alone, stranded in the foggy abyss of the Louisiana marshlands. Suddenly, a faint light appeared in the distance, cutting through the thick fog. It seemed to flicker like a distant beacon of hope. I hesitated, unsure if I should follow it, but the alternative was to remain trapped in the darkness. As I cautiously drove towards the light, the whispers outside the car grew louder, filling the air with an eerie cacophony of voices. The marshlands seemed to come alive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent was lurking in the shadows. The light led me to an old, dilapidated shack standing alone in the marshlands. It seemed out of place in such a desolate landscape, and I felt a sense of trepidation as I approached it. Despite my fear, I had no other choice but to seek help. I stepped out of the car and made my way towards the shack, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers grew louder and more frenzied, as if they were warning me to turn back. With trembling hands, I knocked on the door, and it creaked open on its own. Inside, I could see nothing but darkness. Fear consumed me, but I couldn't turn away now. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside the eerie shack. The whispers reached a deafening crescendo, and I felt a presence watching me from the shadows. In a moment of sheer terror, I turned and ran towards the door, desperate to escape the clutches of whatever haunted this place. But the door wouldn't budge, as if it were mocking my futile attempts to flee. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt the weight of the darkness pressing down on me. It was as if the marshlands themselves were alive with an ancient malevolence. As I stood there, paralyzed with fear, the whispers seemed to morph into a haunting chant, filling the air with an otherworldly energy. I felt like I was losing touch with reality, as if I had stepped into a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. In that moment of terror, I made a decision. I closed my eyes and called out for help, refusing to succumb to the darkness that threatened to consume me. And then, suddenly, the shack fell silent. The whispers disappeared, and the darkness lifted. I opened my eyes to find myself standing outside the shack, the fog still swirling around me. As I drove through the dark and foggy night in the backroads of Louisiana, an uneasy feeling crept over me. The thick mist obscured my vision, and I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in my rearview mirror, steadily following my every move. My heart raced, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. No matter how fast I drove, those haunting eyes remained constant, never drawing nearer or farther away. Panic surged through me, and I tried to reason with myself, convincing myself that it was just a trick of the light or my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew this was something else entirely. As I continued down the desolate highway, the eyes in the mirror seemed to communicate with me, flashing their headlights in a strange pattern. My anxiety grew, and I couldn't help but feel that they were trying to convey some message, but I couldn't decipher its meaning. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to focus on the road ahead, but my gaze kept darting back to the rearview mirror, drawn to those eerie glowing eyes. The flickering headlights only added to the sense of dread that had enveloped me, as if I was being drawn into some twisted game with an unknown adversary. With each passing mile, the eyes in the mirror seemed to grow closer, yet they never seemed to change their position. It was as if they were somehow connected to my car, moving with me, tracking my every movement. Desperate to escape the eerie presence, I decided to take a detour, hoping to shake off whatever was following me. But no matter how many twists and turns I made, the eyes persisted, an ever-present reminder of my pursuer. In my state of panic, I fumbled to grab my phone and call for help, but the lack of signal only added to my sense of isolation. It was as if I had entered another world, a nightmarish realm where I was alone with a mysterious and malevolent force. As I drove deeper into the fog, I noticed strange symbols and markings on the side of the road, almost as if they were guiding me towards an unknown destination. My heart pounded in my chest, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being led somewhere, but for what purpose, I couldn't fathom. My palms grew sweaty as I clutched the steering wheel, my mind racing with terrifying possibilities. Were they trying to warn me of some impending threat? Or were they the harbinger of something even more sinister, something that had set its sights on me? The night seemed to grow darker and more oppressive, and the isolation of the highway only heightened my sense of vulnerability. There was nowhere to turn, no one to seek help from, and the eyes in the mirror were my only companion in this nightmarish journey. I tried to focus on my surroundings, searching for any signs of life or a place to seek refuge, but the desolate landscape offered no solace. The eerie silence was only broken by the hum of the engine and the frantic beating of my heart. The whispers outside the car intensified, becoming more distinct and menacing. It was as if the night itself was alive with malevolence, seeking to swallow me whole. I clutched the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white, and tried to fight off the rising terror. My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan to escape this nightmarish ordeal. I considered abandoning my car and fleeing into the fog on foot, but the thought of facing the unknown on foot in the darkness only filled me with more dread. The glowing eyes remained relentless, casting an eerie glow in the foggy night. It was as if they were drawing me closer, urging me to confront whatever lay ahead. I could no longer deny that I was being guided towards something, but I couldn't comprehend what it wanted from me. Time seemed to blur together as I continued to drive, the fog becoming thicker and more suffocating with each passing moment. I felt as though I had entered a different realm, a place where the laws of reality no longer applied. In a desperate attempt to escape, I made a sudden turn onto an even smaller, more secluded road. The eyes followed, never wavering from their fixed position in the mirror. It was as if they were toying with me, reveling in my terror. My heart pounded in my chest as I considered my options. There was no sign of civilization, no help to be found in this desolate and haunting landscape. The whispers outside the car grew louder, becoming a haunting chorus of voices that seemed to mock my futile attempts to escape. In that moment of despair, I made a decision. I would confront whatever was following me, whatever wanted me in this nightmarish realm. With a deep breath, I steeled myself and turned my car around to face the glowing eyes. As I brought my car to a stop, the fog seemed to swirl around me, taking on a life of its own. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with an unsettling energy. I braced myself for whatever would come next, determined to face this terrifying force head-on. But then, as suddenly as it all began, the fog lifted, and the glowing eyes disappeared. I found myself back on the familiar highway, the night no longer filled with whispers or strange symbols. Shaken and bewildered, I drove on, my mind reeling from the inexplicable events of the night. Whatever had been following me had vanished without a trace, leaving me with more questions than answers. To this day, I still can't explain what happened that night on the backroads of Louisiana. It remains an unsettling mystery, a terrifying encounter with the unknown that continues to haunt my dreams. And though I try to convince myself it was all just a figment of my imagination, deep down, I know that the glowing eyes in the mirror were all too real. It was a seemingly ordinary night as I drove through the quiet roads of Texas. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding landscape. As I rounded a bend, my headlights caught a glimpse of something peculiar on the side of the road, an old, abandoned school bus. My heart skipped a beat as I caught sight of the dilapidated vehicle. It sat there, like a forgotten relic from the past, covered in dust and rust. The windows were fogged up, and as I squinted through my windshield, I saw what sent shivers down my spine, small handprints, almost childlike, imprinted on the glass. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The small handprints were unmistakable, and they were smeared across the fogged-up windows of my car. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of the eerie sight before me. I felt a knot forming in my stomach, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. I tried to tell myself that it was just a coincidence, that there must be some logical explanation for what I was seeing, but deep down, I knew that this was no ordinary occurrence. The fog outside my car seemed to grow thicker, obscuring my view of the surrounding area. I strained my eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of anything unusual, but all I could see were shadows dancing in the mist. I couldn't tear my eyes away from those haunting marks. Who could have left them there? And why? The bus seemed out of place, stranded in the darkness, its purpose long forgotten. My curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't resist slowing down to get a clearer look. Every instinct in me urged me to keep driving, to leave that eerie sight behind, but my morbid curiosity compelled me to investigate further. I stopped my car a safe distance away and peered through my windshield at the mysterious school bus. A gust of wind rustled through the trees, making the branches sway like skeletal fingers in the moonlight. My surroundings felt oppressive, and the air seemed to thicken with each passing second. The weight of the night pressed down on me, and I felt an inexplicable sense of dread. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I turned on my hazard lights for added precaution, in case any other vehicles approached this desolate stretch of road. The thought of being completely alone in the presence of that forsaken bus made my skin crawl. As I stared at those tiny handprints on the fogged-up windows, my mind raced with questions. Who were those children? Were they lost? Did they wander off, never to return? Or did something more sinister occur within the walls of that abandoned bus? A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and I swear I heard faint whispers carried on the breeze. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breaths came out in shallow gasps. I felt a strange sensation, as if I was being watched from within the darkness of the bus. In that moment, a series of unsettling images flashed before my eyes. Shadows moved behind the fogged-up windows, and I could almost make out small silhouettes lurking inside. My rational mind tried to dismiss these visions as mere tricks of my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. I quickly turned off my hazard lights, not wanting to attract any unwanted attention. The darkness outside seemed to grow thicker, enveloping the bus and my car in an impenetrable shroud. Fighting the rising panic within me, I fumbled to grab my phone and call for help. But as I held the device in my trembling hand, I noticed the lack of signal bars. My heart sank. I was truly on my own in this eerie encounter. My eyes remained fixated on the abandoned bus, and I noticed a faint light flickering within its interior. The sight sent shivers down my spine, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. What could possibly be inside that bus? I decided to leave, to drive away from this sinister scene and never look back. My foot hovered above the gas pedal, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Fear rooted me to my seat, chaining me to that haunted sight. And then, from within the bus, a figure emerged. My breath caught in my throat as I saw a small, shadowy silhouette standing in the dim light. It was the shape of a child, but something about it felt off, unsettling. My fight-or-flight response kicked in, and without thinking, I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, sending my car speeding away from that chilling sight. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the sounds of the night. I drove for what felt like an eternity, the image of that abandoned school bus etched into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something deeply disturbing, something that I was never meant to witness. To this day, I can't explain what I saw that night in Texas, and I don't know if I ever want to. The memory of those tiny handprints and the haunting figure within the bus still sends shivers down my spine. Some mysteries are best left unsolved, and some encounters are better forgotten. But that night, I learned that the darkness can hide many secrets, and some things are better left undisturbed in the shadows. It was a moonless night as I drove through the remote hills of West Virginia. The winding road seemed to stretch on forever, surrounded by dense woods that whispered secrets in the darkness. It was the kind of eerie night that sent chills down your spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I navigated the narrow road, my headlights caught a peculiar sight up ahead. A group of people, all dressed in tattered and worn-out clothing, stood motionless on the roadside. Their presence was unsettling, and my heart skipped a beat as I slowed down to get a better look. Panic gripped me, and I instinctively reached for the car's lock button, making sure my doors were securely shut. My mind raced with questions and fears. Who were these people? What were they doing out here in the middle of nowhere, dressed in such strange and tattered attire? Were they stranded travelers in need of help, or was there something more sinister at play? I peered through my windshield, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The group consisted of about 6 or 7 individuals, all facing the road with an unnerving synchronicity. But what truly sent shivers down my spine were their eyes, glowing red in the darkness. As I inched closer, I noticed the details of their appearance. Their clothes were tattered and mud-stained, as if they had been wandering these desolate roads for days. Their eyes were vacant, yet their gaze seemed to bore into my very soul. My breaths quickened, and a cold sweat formed on my brow. I felt as if I were intruding on something I wasn't meant to see, as if I had stumbled upon a hidden world that was never meant to be witnessed by outsiders. My rational mind tried to dismiss it as a prank, but the intensity of those red eyes told a different story. It was as if some otherworldly force possessed them, casting an eerie aura on the scene. I couldn't tear my eyes away, captivated and terrified by their collective gaze. My foot hovered above the gas pedal, unsure of whether to stay or flee from this unsettling sight. I wondered if they were merely trying to spook me, a group of thrill-seekers playing a late-night prank. But something about their eerie stillness and glowing eyes suggested a darker truth. An unsettling sense of dread settled over me, like a heavy blanket of darkness. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I considered turning around, finding another route, but the narrow road offered little opportunity for escape. I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence, that these people were probably locals pulling an elaborate joke. But as my eyes met theirs, I sensed an inexplicable malevolence, a feeling that I was intruding upon something I was never meant to see. A part of me considered calling for help, alerting the authorities to this strange encounter. But as I reached for my phone, I realized I had no signal. The isolation of these remote hills had cut me off from the outside world. My mind raced with thoughts and questions, each one more disturbing than the last. Were these people part of some twisted cult? Were they dangerous? Should I even consider approaching them to see if they needed help? Just as I debated my next move, the group of people suddenly shifted, turning as one to face me directly. My breath caught in my throat as their glowing red eyes locked onto mine. It was as if they could see into my very soul, peering into the depths of my fear. In that moment, my instincts screamed at me to drive away, to leave this macabre sight behind. I pressed my foot down on the gas pedal, and my car lurched forward, but something seemed to be holding me back, as if an unseen force was urging me to stay. As I hesitated, the group started to move towards my car, their movements eerily coordinated, like a silent dance of malevolence. Panic gripped me, and I finally found the strength to tear my eyes away from those haunting red orbs. With trembling hands, I managed to turn the car around, my heart pounding in my chest. I drove away as fast as I could, leaving those mysterious figures behind in the darkness. The road stretched on, and I dared not look back, fearful of what I might see. As I put distance between myself and that terrifying encounter, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding. The remote hills of West Virginia held secrets, and I had unwittingly glimpsed into a world of darkness. I knew I would never forget those glowing red eyes, the enigmatic figures standing on the roadside. The memory would haunt me, a constant reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved, that some encounters are best forgotten. To this day, I wonder about that night in the remote hills of West Virginia, the night I encountered a group of people with glowing red eyes. And as I drive through dark, deserted roads, I can't help but wonder what other inexplicable horrors await in the shadows. It was a pleasant night in Oklahoma, the kind that made you want to roll down your windows and let the cool breeze fill your car. I was on my way back from a weekend trip when suddenly, my car sputtered and came to a complete stop. Panic washed over me as I realized I was in the middle of nowhere, with no signs of civilization in sight. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm and assess the situation. The starry night sky above offered a glimmer of hope, but the darkness that surrounded me was suffocating. I knew I had to get out of the car to see if I could fix the problem or at least find a signal on my phone to call for help. As I stepped outside, the cool breeze felt refreshing against my skin. I surveyed the area, hoping to spot any signs of life or a nearby gas station. But all I saw were endless fields stretching into the darkness. There was an eerie stillness in the air, broken only by the distant hooting of an owl. I waited for a moment, hoping to hear the distant rumble of an engine approaching. But all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat, quickening with each passing second. The isolation of the empty road sent shivers down my spine, and I had the distinct feeling that I was being watched. Just as I was about to get back inside my car, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps approaching from the darkness. My heart leaped into my throat, and I strained my eyes to see who or what was coming towards me. There was no one in sight, yet the footsteps grew louder and closer. I couldn't explain it, but the sensation of being watched intensified, and every fiber of my being screamed at me to run and hide. Fear consumed me, and I made a split-second decision to get back inside the car. But as I reached for the door handle, it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me, and I tugged at the handle with all my strength, but it seemed to be stuck. I was trapped outside, exposed to whatever unseen presence lurked in the darkness. The heavy footsteps continued to draw nearer, and I felt as though every moment stretched into an eternity. My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Was it a person, an animal, or something else entirely? I was paralyzed with fear, unable to tear my eyes away from the shadows surrounding me. With a surge of adrenaline, I banged on the car door, desperate to break free from this nightmarish situation. I couldn't explain why the door wouldn't open, and the panic threatened to consume me entirely. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, and I stumbled into the safety of my car. I locked the doors and turned on the engine, ready to speed away from whatever had been haunting me in the darkness. As I drove off, my heart still pounded in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The isolation of the empty road felt more oppressive than ever, and I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone or something following me. It wasn't until I reached a nearby town and found a gas station that I finally felt safe. I called for help, explaining my situation, and waited anxiously for someone to come to my rescue. Looking back on that night, I can't help but shudder at the inexplicable terror I experienced. The heavy footsteps, the feeling of being watched, the door that wouldn't open, it all felt like a waking nightmare. To this day, I don't know what I encountered on that deserted road in Oklahoma. It could have been my imagination playing tricks on me, or perhaps there was something more sinister lurking in the darkness. Whatever it was, I know I'll never forget that night and the chilling fear that washed over me in the middle of nowhere. It was a late and eerie night in the remote wilderness of Alaska, with the darkness enveloping everything around me. The only source of light came from my car's headlights, slicing through the inky blackness as I drove along the desolate road. The surrounding wilderness seemed to close in on me, amplifying the feeling of isolation and vulnerability. As I navigated the winding road, a sudden movement caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat when I caught a fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure running alongside my car, just outside the reach of my headlights. It moved with an unnatural grace, matching my speed effortlessly. Fear washed over me like a cold wave, and I instinctively pressed down on the gas pedal, trying to put some distance between me and whatever was lurking in the darkness. But no matter how fast I drove, the shadowy figure kept pace, a silent and haunting presence that seemed to taunt me from the shadows. My mind raced with questions and fear. Who or what was this figure? Why was it following me? Was it human, or something else entirely? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted, that I had stumbled upon something I was never meant to see. A chilling sense of dread settled in my gut as the figure persisted in its pursuit. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, that the darkness was distorting my perception. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more I felt that something sinister was at play. In a desperate attempt to shake off my pursuer, I turned down an even more remote and winding path, hoping to lose them in the labyrinth of trees and shadows. The adrenaline coursed through my veins, my heart pounding loudly in my ears as I strained to hear any sign of the figure's presence. Yet, no matter where I turned, the shadowy figure remained a constant companion, a dark silhouette that haunted the edges of my vision. Its presence felt suffocating, and the tension in the air was palpable. As minutes turned to what felt like hours, I began to question my sanity. Could I really be seeing this figure, or was it a figment of my imagination? But each time I stole a glance in my rearview mirror, the dark shape was there, a chilling reminder that I was not alone. Fear gnawed at me like a persistent beast, and I felt a sense of helplessness and vulnerability that I had never experienced before. I was trapped in this nightmarish game of cat and mouse, and I couldn't see any way out. The Alaskan wilderness, which had once seemed serene and majestic, now felt like an untamed and sinister realm. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind, sent shivers down my spine as I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I continued to drive through the wilderness, I knew that I had to find a way to escape this haunting presence. I kept my eyes glued to the road ahead, trying to remain focused and composed despite the terror that gripped my heart. Finally, I spotted a faint glimmer of light in the distance. It was the faint glow of a small cabin nestled amidst the trees. My heart lifted with hope as I knew that the cabin offered a chance to seek refuge and possibly find help. With renewed determination, I drove towards the cabin, the figure still persisting in its pursuit. As I approached, I saw a figure emerge from the shadows, its features still shrouded in darkness. I rushed inside the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest, and slammed the door shut behind me. My breaths came in quick, shallow gasps as I desperately looked for a way to secure the door. In the dim light of the cabin, I finally saw the figure clearly for the first time. It was a man, his face obscured by a tangle of unkempt hair and a wild look in his eyes. "Why are you following me?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling with fear. The man's response was a low, haunting chuckle that sent chills down my spine. "I'm not following you," he said, his voice laced with an unsettling calmness. "I've been here all along." I felt a sense of unease settle over me as I realized what he meant. This cabin wasn't a refuge from the darkness outside, it was a part of it. The figure had never been chasing me. Instead, he had been leading me here all along, drawing me deeper into this nightmarish realm. In that moment, I knew that I had stepped into a world of shadows and secrets, where reality and illusion intertwined. The line between what was real and what was not had blurred, leaving me trapped in a terrifying and unknown reality. As the night wore on, the man's cryptic words echoed in my mind, leaving me questioning my own sanity. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was lost in a nightmarish maze, where the darkness and the shadows held their secrets close. To this day, I don't know what I encountered that night in the remote wilderness of Alaska. Whether it was a figment of my imagination or a haunting presence from another realm, I may never know. But the fear and tension of that night will forever be etched into my memory, a reminder that there are things in this world that defy explanation and haunt the edges of our reality. On a moonless night in the deserts of Arizona, I found myself on a desolate stretch of road, the darkness seemingly swallowing everything around me. The only source of light came from my car's headlights, slicing through the inky blackness as I drove alone through the barren landscape. As I continued down the desolate road, my eyes caught a strange sight up ahead. Glowing symbols, illuminated by an eerie, otherworldly light, appeared to be painted on the asphalt. My heart skipped a beat as I approached the symbols, unsure of their origin and purpose. They seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, captivating and haunting in equal measure. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to find another route and avoid whatever mysterious force lay ahead. But curiosity got the better of me, and with a mix of trepidation and intrigue, I decided to continue on. Fear and curiosity battled within me, and I found myself slowing down, drawn to the symbols by an inexplicable force. The symbols seemed to have a magnetic pull, as if they were trying to draw me closer, to ensnare me in their sinister grasp. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white. I knew I should turn around and drive away from this eerie sight, but something held me back, an unexplainable fascination with the mysterious symbols. As I got closer, I could feel the energy in the air, crackling like electricity. It was as if the symbols held some ancient, otherworldly power that transcended the physical realm. The very air seemed to vibrate with an eerie energy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at play. I dared not turn off my headlights, fearing what I might see in the darkness. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, as if they were alive with some dark force. As I passed over the symbols, an inexplicable chill ran down my spine, and my car suddenly shuddered to a halt. Panic surged through me as I tried to restart the engine, but to no avail. The car was completely unresponsive, leaving me stranded in the heart of the desolate desert. My mind raced with disturbing thoughts. Was this some kind of trap? Had I stumbled upon something otherworldly and malevolent? Fear gnawed at me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that I had crossed some forbidden boundary. Summoning all my courage, I decided to step out of the car to assess the situation. The desert air was chilling, and an unsettling silence enveloped me. The glowing symbols seemed to loom over me, their presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread as I opened the hood of my car, hoping to find some mechanical issue that could be easily fixed. But as I tinkered with the engine, my mind kept drifting back to the glowing symbols and the strange aura they exuded. Every creak of the desert wind, every rustle of the bushes, seemed to amplify the tension in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone, that there was something unseen and ominous lurking in the darkness. My imagination ran wild with disturbing possibilities. Were these symbols some kind of warning? A summoning of dark forces from beyond? I tried to dismiss these thoughts as irrational, but the more I tried to rationalize the situation, the more the feeling of unease grew. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to fix the issue with my car. With trembling hands, I closed the hood and jumped back into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and a wave of relief washed over me. Without wasting another moment, I stepped on the gas and sped away from the glowing symbols and the eerie desolation. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance back at the symbols one last time. They remained there, haunting and enigmatic, leaving me with a sense of unease that would linger long after I had left the desert behind. As I drove, my eyes darted from side to side, searching for any sign of movement or anything out of the ordinary. The tension in the air was palpable, and I could feel the weight of fear pressing down on me. My mind played tricks on me, conjuring up images of sinister figures lurking just beyond the reach of my headlights. Every shadow seemed to come alive, and every rustling sound sent my heart racing. I didn't know how long I had been driving, but the darkness showed no signs of letting up. The only light came from the moon, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. I didn't stop until I reached a well-lit and populated area, where the tension in the air finally began to ease. I couldn't explain what had happened that night, but one thing was certain: I had encountered something inexplicable and terrifying in the deserts of Arizona. To this day, the memory of those glowing symbols and the strange power they held haunts my dreams, a constant reminder that there are forces beyond our understanding that lurk in the shadows of our world. And I can't help but wonder if I had stumbled upon something ancient and otherworldly, a secret that was never meant to be uncovered.